Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am so honored to be a part of this Black History celebration. I've had the wonderful privilege of touring this country for over 30 years with my one-woman show, Harriet Tubman, The Chosen One, and for over 20 years with my one-woman performance of Rosa Parks' Such a Time. I've collected artifacts and taken pictures of my travels through these years and combining them into an exhibit that I call The Portals Through Time. Black history is American history, and we must tell the whole truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If we do not teach the truth of our history, how will future generations learn what to embrace and what to rebuke? How will they learn and understand and accept their fellow Americans? Truth will lead you into the light. Lies will lead you into the darkness. We have wonderful books and of poetry and stories, biographies, songs that have been penned through the years. Artists, activists, people who use their talents and gifts to open the eyes and minds and hearts of their fellow human beings. Today, I'd like to read for you several pieces that I found extraordinary. Some may be familiar and some may not, but I hope that they will feed your mind, your body, and your spirit. The first is from the book 400 Souls. It's a collection of writings by 90 brilliant writers. This one is a writing by Nikole Hanna-Jones, The Arrival. 400 years ago in 1620, a cargo ship lowered its anchor on the eastern shore of North America. It had spent 66 grueling days on the perilous Atlantic Ocean, and its 102 passengers fell into praise as they spotted land for the first time in more than 2 months. These Puritans had fled England in search of religious freedom. We know all their names, such as James Clinton, Francis Cook, Mary Brewster. Their descendants proudly trace their lineage back to the group that established self-governance in the New World. That is among the white population. Indigenous people were already governing themselves. They arrived on the Mayflower, a vessel that has been called one of the most important ships in American history. Every fall, regaled by stories of the courageous pilgrims, elementary school students whose skin is peach and tan and chestnut, fashion black captain hats from paper to dress up like the passengers of the Mayflower. Our country has wrapped a national holiday around the Pilgrim's story, ensuring the Mayflowers a national holiday around the Pilgrim's story. The Mayflower has its mythical place in American narrative. But a year before the Mayflower, in 1619, another group dropped anchor on the eastern shore of North America. Its name was the White Lion. And it, too, would become one of the most important ships in American history. And yet, there is no ship manifest inscribed with the names of its passengers, no descendants society. These people arrival was deemed so insignificant, their humanity so inconsequential that we do not even know how many of those were packed into the White Lion's hull. How many came ashore? Just that some 20 and odd Negroes disembarked and joined the British colonists in Virginia. But in his sweeping history before the Mayflower, first published in 1962, scholar Leon Bennett said that the White Lion no one sensed how extraordinary she really was. But few ships before or since have unloaded a more momentous cargo. A cargo, this group of 20 or to 30 Angolians sold from the deck of the White Lion by criminal English marauders in exchange for food and supplies, was so fundamental to the American story. But while every American child learns about the Mayflower, virtually no American child has learned about the White Lion. Yet the story of the White Lion is classically American. It's a harrowing tale this country would rather not remember, a taint on a nation that believes above all in its exceptionality. The Adams and Eves of Black America did not arrive here in search of freedom or a better life. They were captured and stolen and forced onto a ship, shackled, writhing in filth as they suffered and starved. Some 40% of the Angolians who boarded this ghastly vessel did not make it across the Middle Passage. They embarked not as people, but as property, sold to white colonists who were just beginning to birth democracy for themselves, commencing a 400-year struggle between the two opposing ideas fundamental to America. And so, the White Lion has been relegated to what Bennett called the back alley of American history. There are no annual classroom commemorations of this moment in August 1619. No children dress up as its occupants. No holiday honors it. The White Lion and its people on the ship have been expunged from our collective history. Now, this omission is intentional. When we are creating a shared history, what we remember is just as revelatory as what we forget. If the Mayflower was the advent of American freedom, then the White Lion was the advent of American slavery. And so while arriving just a year apart, one ship and its people have been immortalized, the other completely erased. W.E.B. Du Bois called such an erasure the propaganda of history. It is propaganda like this, he said, that has led men in the past to insist that history is, well, lies agreed upon, to the point out the danger of such misinformation. Because what is clear is that while we can erase the memory of the White Lion, we cannot erase its impact. Contradictions led founder Thomas Jefferson some 150 years later to draft the majestic words declaring the inalienable and universal rights of men for a new country that would hold 1/5 of its population, the literal and figurative descendants of the White Lion, in absolute bondage. The contradictions between these two founding arrivals, the Mayflower and the White Lion, would lead to the deadliest war in American history, fought over how much of our nation would be enslaved and how much would be free. They would lead to lead us to spend a century seeking to expand democracy abroad, beckoning other lands to give us your tired and your poor, your huddled masters yearning to breathe free, while violently suppressing democracy at home for the descendants of those involuntary immigrants who arrived on ships like the White Lion. They would lead to the elections back to back of the first Black president and then of a white nationalist one. The erasure of August 1619 has served as part of a century-long effort to hide the crime. but it is also, as Du Bois explained in Souls of Black Folks, robbed Americans, Black Americans, of our lineage. Would America have been America without her Negro people? We cannot phantom it. Black Americans, by definition, are an amalgamated people. Our bodies form the genetic code. We are African, Native, and European that make America and Americans. We are the living manifestation of the physical, cultural, and ideological merger of the peoples who landed on those ships, but a year apart, and those people who were already here at their arrival. Despite the way we have been taught, these histories, these stories do not match side by side or in parallel, but are inherently entwined, inseparable. The time for subordinating one of these histories to the other has long passed. We must remember the white lion along with the Mayflower. As Du Bois says, nations reel and stagger on their way. They make hideous mistakes. They commit frightful wrongs. They do great and beautiful things. We shall not, is it not best to guide humanity by telling the truth about all of this, so far as the truth is attainable? The true story of America begins here in 1619. This is our story. We must not flinch.